Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to welcome you to our first session for this week's Healthspan Show. We've got such a lot of really great content coming up this week, and we're really starting on a high. So without further ado, I'm going to throw straight over to our fabulous moderator for today, Geoff Briggs from the No. 7 Beauty Company. Geoff, over to you.
Thank you very much, Angela. So just a little bit of introduction about myself, just so you know, and then hopefully I will spend most of the time shut up and listening to our panel of speakers. Geoff Briggs, I work for No. 7 Beauty Company, which is part of Walgreen's Boots Alliance, and my role is primarily to go out, identify, evaluate, and then potentially develop products and services that can be put on the market under the No. 7 Beauty brands. So that's my role. So obviously I'm interested in a whole area of aging and anti-aging and pro-aging and all of this sort of stuff. And this is why I'm moderating here, because I hope to learn stuff myself. So I'll ask the audience, the panelists to introduce themselves. Patrick, you're first on my list. So Patrick, would you like to have a brief description of who you are?
Morning, Geoff. Thank you. My name's Patrick McGuirk. I'm co-founder of Saltee Skincare, a business that we founded 3 years ago. And we started with a background for myself across consumer, but we decided to do something slightly different within the skincare and specifically SPF space, where we felt there was a lack of real challenger brands that reflected our relationship as consumers with sunshine in particular, with travel, and with the broader cosmetics industry that just seen a lack of innovation in that space. And really this session around longevity, sustainability and protection pretty much describes the principles of what sits behind our brand and behind our business. So hopefully looking forward to a good discussion around those areas this morning.
So Annee, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Geoff. Thank you so much for having me on the panel today. I'm Annee de Mamiel, founder of de Mamiel Skincare. I guess my background is I started very much in Western science with a degree in anatomy and physiology from University of Sydney. I studied chiropractic science, and the human body has always been a fascination for me in the way that it works. I took a leap and studied Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and spent my internship in a hospital in China looking at how Eastern and Western and those different philosophies really interacted in the cosmetology department, and how that sort of formulated in the skin. It just gave me really interesting insight in how things that we don't know really impact the body, and how each practice can work in unison together. And I really love the combination of these philosophies and how that allows me to consider the root causes of many issues rather than just the symptom when I'm formulating and bringing those elements together. So really looking forward to discussing how that different philosophy and well-being, which is now so prominent, comes into all of these elements for today.
And Michèle.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Michèle Evrard. I am the founder of Cosmetics 27, which is a line of natural regenerative cosmeceutics. And I am based in Paris. I am a pharmacist, and I worked for over, I would say, 25 years, let's call it that, in the beauty industry in many of the large corporations, and built my career on product development and international marketing. I got into the entrepreneurial part of this and creating my own brand, actually walking backwards, because who needs another cosmetic brand or skincare brand on the market? And I started back in 2009 and launched the first product in 2009. And that was following some research I'd done on skin regeneration, which is my passion. Well, from my days in pharmacy and school, of course, formulation is my ultimate passion. But then the skin has been my focus. And just out of a personal accident, I got into looking for a healing remedy for my own leg. And I fell upon an ingredient, which is Centella asiatica, which is now part of all of our formulas. It's we call it our longevity secret in our products. That plan got me to study two things: natural remedies, and the alternative pharmacopoeia, meaning having access to what makes, for example, this is part of the Ayurvedic medicinal plants. And I got also involved into and interested into integrative medicine, which is about regenerative and regeneration. And this is something that's not very popular here in France. This is more Anglo-Saxon and American. We call it the 4P medicine in France because it's proactive, preventive, participative, and personalized. And all those P's are very interesting because they are part of what my concept to an approach to skincare is, which is absolutely personalized, inclusive, and is meant to be adapted to every skin. And my principle is that every skin is unique. And why should it be using the same product as anyone else? So we're not making bespoke skincare, but we're putting out products that have the capacity to be blended. And this is part of what we put together in formulation. They blend together to achieve what's called a bespoke, made to measure texture and formula that would adapt to every skin needs. There's no concept of age, of skin type, of even ethnic. It's for everyone, yet it's to be adapted. So that's part of the whole concept, and the idea is really to build on that and bring every skin the capacity to self-regenerate. So the whole basis of this is homeostasis, self-protection, self-regeneration, and we work on formulas around all this. So we are into the pro-aging rather than anti-aging approach of skincare.
So you're answering all the questions we've got from the start. You've gone through a whole agenda almost. We could shut the meeting down now.
Well, you go now. I'll stop.
So I'll go back to Annee here.
Mm-hmm.
The title of this: Why we're not talking about anti-aging. What is wrong with talking about anti-aging?
I guess it's that interesting thing, isn't it? It's like, where does aging start? We begin aging from the moment we're born, and I think culturally, it's a really interesting concept. We call it. There's been so many different words that we're trying to replace anti-aging with, but it's the way we look at it. It's the way that we as humans embrace that, and I think aging is a natural part, and it's being able to be comfortable with who we are and how we age, because there's all different types. We used to always think that it was genetic, and there was mostly the majority of the way we age was genetic, and we now are aware, as science evolves, discussions evolve, that there's so many other factors that which we will get into later as to what and how we age. And for me, it's about having my patients, my clients, look and feel the best that they can at that age, and being comfortable with that. And then from that, everything flows, and really sort of digging into that. And we look at that from a very cultural perspective as well, and that our culture is very much about this whole anti-aging stuff. And we look at the elders and the wisdom and how that respect of aging is actually celebrated. And I think that's a really sort of interesting feature in terms of how we look at that whole anti-aging process, and what that means, that it's more than just our skin and the way that we look.
Okay, so Patrick, I'll come to you. Anything you'd like to add to that? And if we're not talking anti-aging, what should we be talking? How should we be describing this?
I think it's really interesting, the type of discussions we have on this type of forum versus the reality. So clearly within the industry, and when we talk to one another, we see this strong movement towards pro-aging. But over the weekend, actually, I just went and did a little sample on Facebook to look at how our industry is still presenting itself in advertising. I looked at 10 brands' current Facebook campaigns, broadly in the skincare space. I'm not going to call anyone out here, but of those 6, their leading adverts that they're placing most of their spend behind at the moment, talking to consumers to bring them into their brand, are proactively talking about anti-aging. And in some instances where you then delve beneath and follow their links as to how they're positioning themselves, and despite being businesses that want to, and we'll talk in PR terms about pro-aging, actually still their message is anti-aging in terms of orientation. Now, for myself, our business as Saltee, we're based around protection. You know, our first range was the sun care SPF range, and I think probably unarguably the science around SPF and the impact that has on how our skin matures, ages, is probably stronger than other areas. So I feel it's slightly different for me talking about this than some areas where the science is far less robust. But I think there's just a bit of a reality check of what's actually going on in the industry, and still how, even though we might try and step back from it, the reality is that the data tells you that people will come and sample and test your products if you talk about the impact it has in terms of the aging of your skin. I think there's just a reality check that's important to have at this point.
Okay, so you've started talking about what you target, which is obviously much more the protection side of things here. Obviously your SPF, but protection is much wider than that. What else is there that we should be protecting against? How should we be addressing this? What factors should we be looking at?
Well, there's a whole range. You know, look, for example, if you'd asked me a year and a half ago whether Saltee was going to have a hand gel, antibacterial hand gel within our portfolio, I'd probably have said no. In reality, it was a long list of areas we might develop. But I think it's the ability for a brand, ourselves, and, you know, be true, I'm sure, the way in which Annee and Michèle also think about how they bring and formulate products, is what are those protection or longevity benefits that you're bringing. And, you know, we started with SPF. It's the most straightforward, but then when you come into other areas around the impact around hyperpigmentation, you look at the way in which that reacts to different skin tones and skin types as well. I think it's being very clear in terms of, you know, what qualifies as something that's a product that's credible when we're having this type of debate.
Okay, so the term that obviously we band about in the industry is the exposome, and obviously sunlight is a huge part of this, and probably the major part, but there is more. So Michèle, I'll come back to you. What else? What is the exposome? What else forms part of this?
Well, I think, you know, Annee and Patrick touched on this subject of the exposome, which is a fairly recent discovery or element that got into, you know, that is part of now concerns for health, which is basically all the other external environmental factors that impact our health, aside from our genomes, meaning our genetics. So we're, like Annee was saying, we're all kind of like framed by our genes, but lately the scientists have found out that what surrounds us has probably as much, if not more, impact on our health than our internal genetic luggage. And so in this exposome, there is, of course, a lot of environmental factors, but they can be external or internal. Take it, your lifestyle, your eating habits, the way if you smoke or not, and then it could be external, like pollution. So all of these now we are taking into consideration and account into dealing the skin and helping to protect, like Patrick is on the SPF, which is the #1, of course, risk factor for the skin. But today there's many others. I know Annie's working heavily on stress. We do work on stress as well, because I think it's the #1 factor when you're not exposed to sun. But then there's many more. So we've been working on a lot of those. And basically the answer is antioxidant. Oxidation is everything. And without oxidation, we wouldn't be aging. But in fact is we have one life to go through, and we're all going the same place. But so it's to prevent from the excessive oxidation from the environment. Pollution, of course, is a major factor these days. And pollution can have a lot of different aspects. Of course, when we think of pollution, we think about the fine particles, the fumes, the cars, the planes, the air around us. But it can be the noise. It can be a lot of the things we use daily. And so we feel that people have to become more conscious about what they can do for themselves, first of all, And so it's much more a change in paradigm from the consumer standpoint, because to Patrick's point, they're still looking for anti-aging, no matter what, they're looking for, to cure this. But to get a good understanding of what they can do for their own skin by limiting, the number of products they might use on a daily basis. I'm not only talking cosmetics. I'm not, sowing the branch we're all sitting on, but there's a lot more around us, and people sometimes don't have conscience that a lot of the household products can be damaging. So the pollution inside and outside are as damaging. And so what we work on is really protect from this as much as we can. So working on formulas that would be, of course, regenerating but antioxidant and or pro-oxidizing factors is one way. When it comes to pollution, there's a lot that has been done, and a lot of research that has been done in the cosmetics industry. And you see a lot of anti-pollution products out there. Works, of course, on the principle of antioxidants. But what we're really trying to prevent is from those things that we are obliged to be facing on a daily life, meaning the external environment. Let's say the fine particles. I'm not going to be able to stop someone from smoking, from you overusing a lot of different products, or or essential oils in their environment, for example. So really, what we try to focus on is what we can do to help the skin rebuild its own self-defense in terms of antioxidant. That we all have this capacity, the inner capacity to defend ourselves, and of course that goes through the different layers of the skin. Microbiome and microbiota being
I was waiting for that, because obviously, as I said, microbiome is my area of expertise, and I've been waiting for somebody to bring it up.
So microbiota being one of them, and of course this is now going out as it's kind of like firecracker and blooming everywhere about probiotics in the skincare. We don't work on probiotics, we work on prebiotics and postbiotics. And so what we're trying to do is, because it is essential that people understand also that, protecting their skin and maintaining a healthy, balanced skin is important. So it starts from, the very first thing is what you eat. And so, a healthy, balanced diet would help your skin. And then in terms of formulation, today we have access to a lot of research. It's still minute, and this much better than me, Geoff. So minute to where it could be or could go. But so to help a skin rebuild a sound and balanced microbiota is the least we can do today. So we use oligosaccharides, polysaccharides, a lot of different ingredients, and postbiotics as well, whether they're hydroxy acids, amino acids. All of these are elements that would feed the commensal bacteria and the good bacteria, the ones that would help maintain the right balance. I'm not going to go. I'll let you go through the explanation.
Yeah,
of
so I was going to say, I'd try. Perhaps we'll finish there, because as soon as you start talking about good bacteria and bad bacteria, my science head kicks in and saying there's no such thing as a good or a bad bacteria.
Or bad, because they change and they're introverse. So yes. I'll let you take on this subject. But in 2 words, it's just about maintaining a sound balance, because your microbiota is the first barrier of defense, fending off the external invaders, whatever they are. So it's important to maintain it in good health. So all of that is what we work on. So it's, of course, many aspects that we can work on, and that we have, I feel today, in terms of cosmetic and skincare brands, have access to really help build a healthy skin, because that's about a healthy skin. Okay,
so we've had a question come through, as you've seen, about the Beiersdorf blue light report. Has anybody read this? Anybody want to comment on it?
I've not read it.
Yeah.
Annee, have you seen it?
No, I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Okay, so it's pretty much just me that looks like it that's read this at the moment. So this is a report that's come out, published last week, that says that 1 week of sitting inside of a computer, in front of a computer screen or a tablet, the blue light that comes from that is equivalent of 1 minute outside in, I think they use a sunny day in Hamburg, which I'm not sure how sunny it is in Hamburg, but a sunny day in Hamburg. So Patrick, I'll throw this back to you. You are our phototherapist, so photo damage expert here.
Well, I think it doesn't surprise me, the findings, and it's fabulous that actually the work's been done to look at it. For me, it ties though to what we're just discussing. So listening to what Michèle was walking through, the whole debate around exposome, it's a relative debate. And it takes me back to around about 15 years ago when I was at the heart of when sustainability was starting to be talked about to the consumer. Lo and behold, what happened is that most businesses out there said, look, we do something that is green, and therefore we will shine a light on that because that means we're a sustainable business. And the analogy I'm drawing, a metaphor, is that actually you look at where consumers are right now on exposome and they don't know what it is. We had a recent focus group, and out of 10, what I'd call qualified frequent beauty high users, no one was familiar with the terminology. I think they will be in 5 years' time, but the danger is that it's relative. Anything that impacts our diet, our level of stress, anything we eat, consume, or that gets applied to our skin can, by the broadest definition, be considered an exposome. And it's about the relativity. And the reason I link it back to that report is that doesn't surprise me at all, but that means that blue light, to a very, 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 very minor degree, is an exposome versus lying on a sunbed for 3 hours on a hot sunny day, which is clearly, by a magnitude or greater. And my concern is that this is going to be a thematic that brands jump on to justify whatever credentials they believe fit with the product that they're marketing. So I actually see real danger around this in terms of the way in which the industry chooses to embrace it, and quite frankly, the way in which maybe some marketeers choose to make something of it that just quite frankly doesn't add up as per that piece of research.
Okay, so we've had a yes, Michèle?
I just wanted to interject one thing. I couldn't agree more with Patrick. And just because we have been using, what we sold as a blue light filter in one of our products. And I'm into the clean business and clean skincare only because I want to be transparent. It has nothing to do with being on a trend. It's really since day one on being transparent. So I wanted to test this thing, and we ran a test on the product. And I can say here, and very humbly at our level, that it didn't prove anything. So I would never, and I agree with Patrick, this is very much a trend that people can jump on. But the amount of blue light that we get, it's not good, of course. But you cannot say that a product's going to be filtering the blue light, and I would not claim it on that product. It was interesting to run, and I would caution about the fact that people just suddenly make it this big problem. There are much more risks with the UV light, UVA and B. I agree with Patrick.
So there's been a couple of people mention clean beauty here. Now, I have to admit, I do not know what clean beauty is. And I think this is one of those things that everybody has their own understanding or description of it. What the consumer knows as clean beauty is possibly not what we know of clean beauty. So Annee, I'll throw back to you. What is clean beauty? I'll leave this one for you because it's a difficult one.
I don't think to be honest, I don't think it's that difficult in that I think people take their own perception of it. There are so many different runaway theories of what it is and where it is. I think ultimately brands have to be clear about what their perception is of clean beauty. I would think about it as something that is, when you're transparent, probably plant-based, natural-based, those sorts of things. Lots of people put us into a clean beauty category. I wouldn't describe us ever as being a clean beauty because there's so many words in there, and I know my bones shudder, as yours would, Geoff, when people start talking about toxicity and non-toxicity and all of these, and chemical and non-chemical. And I think there is no one clear definition. And I think this is where everybody get themselves in knots, and there's lots of loud voices, or there's few loud voices who shout loudly. And so what people are trying to do in terms of, you know, really having their skincare perform in an efficacious way, and a way that's not going to harm. But of course, you know, the testing that we do as part of the EU and everything else, there's no, like, skincare can't harm you. Although our skin are very different, products are very different, and an individual may not be suited to a product, it doesn't mean necessarily a product hasn't got to market without all of those necessary testings. And so I think it's one of the things that regulatory and as an industry, we need to define and just get rid of some of those really bad terms that are out there at the moment.
So you're talking about consumer understanding here, you're talking about the regulatory understanding here.
Yeah.
We presumably sit in the middle. Does that mean this is our job? Whose job is it to both educate the consumer on these things and also talk to the regulatory side to make sure that the claims that we make are valid and the products we make are valid? Who, you know, what role do we have? Is this our role?
I think we have to. I think we really have to begin to stand up and be united in that. And maybe this is a subsection of a different, you know, something that the British Beauty Council, I know, had first began to talk about in that. But I think for the consumer education is so important on all of these things, and not being led down the path of people who are uneducated and who, I guess, sorry, I can't think of the term, like trying to grab headlines and that sort of thing and run away with definitions that aren't really based in that. So, you know, you've got brands who define themselves as clean, that use all sorts of things, and a list of ingredients aren't part of their makeup. But generally, you know, somebody like we don't list anything that we don't use. To me, it's just common sense. And I just think bringing those things together and maybe a proper definition where the consumer can properly understand what is clean, what is, and all of those bits that are just floating. I mean, natural. And we've got, that is a really good example where, you know, what is natural? You know, what is like biofermentation? Is that natural? Is it not? And so there's so much that's left to the consumers need to understand, need to dig, and to really push brands into that level of transparency without sort of having to put a label on it. I think it just helps people to put a label on things, but it's not necessarily good for anybody.
So, Patrick, I'll come back to you on this one. We've had a touch on regulation here. Obviously, you work in the SPF area. This is probably the most heavily regulated as far as what you can and can't put in, and what you can and can't say, and how you actually have to prove efficacy. Would you just like to say what level of work is required to put an SPF label on, and you know, both the UK and the US, because obviously the US, this is one of the huge areas where the US regulations differ from the EU and the UK regulations.
Oh, where to start on that? You're absolutely right. I mean, we always feel it is highly regulated, and quite rightly so. But equally find some of that, I'm careful what I say here, but certainly some of that regulation from a US perspective puzzling, I think. And it's this whole balance between regulation and self-regulation. Let's look at, you know, the most basic around an SPF value, which is clearly accurately regulated. I never see any delineation away from that, and it works effectively. However, the claim on how frequently you need to reapply a product in order to deliver on that benefit is clearly as important, and yet that's something that is effectively self-regulated at the moment. And you know, I see competitors making some quite outlandish claims there, which clearly have a material impact on the efficacy of their product. And It's where you tend to draw the line. So I'm sat there feeling like, yes, in terms of bringing a new SPF product to market in different countries, there's a good deal of a good deal more testing and approval than would be the case certainly for most other product areas, and probably rightly so. Yet I'm sat there saying, actually, we may in some instances need a little more, because the reality is that that level of self-regulation around how to use a product is as important, and is broadly left to us as brands as to how mature and how transparent we are around that. So it is that delicate balance. The one thing I would say is that I've seen recently actually where one brand called out another for making an unreasonable claim. And actually, I won't name check the brands, I don't think that'd be fair, but that business actually then corrected in terms of what they were putting out there. And I'm not sure that's good self-regulation. It feels a bit guerrilla-like in terms of how it operates. But, until we maybe have a more powerful, effective industry body, maybe we individually need to do more of that.
No, I would comment on that those of us who sit within the regulations and try and comply on both ingredients and claims. I know personally there are products out there that are advertised and you think you cannot make that claim, and so it is, we do need to be the guerrillas. We do need to jump on these, because those of us who are sitting within the regulations are suffering because other people are making claims that we would not be willing to make ourselves, because we know we either can't make them or do not have the evidence to support them, or they're illegal claims.
Yes.
Let's move off of this. The other one we've talked about is sustainability, and this has been mentioned a couple of times. Are we a sustainable industry? I suppose that's the first question is, are we a sustainable industry? Michèle?
We're becoming. I think this industry is is a long history, and having been in this part of the business for many years, I think it's clearly fast becoming, and I think this is the only way forward anyway. So everyone has to, but then again, it's just like the clean, where do you put the cursor, and who's really sustainable. And I think there is major effort. I mean, we're a very small brand. We're what's called an indie brand, like Annee and Project Today, so independent, versus the big groups. And but we work with the same parameters and the same objectives. And probably today we have more grounds to be able to deliver what we say, because we are smaller, faster. And I think those brands are pushing the industry in that direction, more or less fast. But it's coming from there, and I think we definitely are becoming a sustainable industry. There was a very interesting statement. I didn't read it all in details, but Natura Brazil, which is a large corporation in Brazil, owns many brands such as the Body Shop or Aesop or Natura Brazil. And they made a statement that they would not be funding any of those companies in the future if they don't deliver ethical and social responsibility in any of their projects. That's very interesting. So that means that everyone has to be focusing on when you talk about ethical projects and sustainability and social responsibility, you're automatically in sustainability. And then there's, of course, limits to what we can do. Our business is becoming trickier every day, and all of us three know this today, in terms, of course, of regulations, but ingredients, sustainability, sourcing, tracking, packaging. We want recyclable, but we now want recycled packaging, which is trickier in terms of compatibility, in terms of developing, the proper quality of product and packaging. But the industry is moving fast. I think probably the area where it's been the fastest over the past 5 to 10 years, I'd say, are the ingredients. The supplies of ingredients, the research has gone tremendously into new innovation and new developments. So I think, are we sustainable? Not 100%, because the first thing you do is consume I don't know, a stick of lipstick, and I'm not, blaming any lipstick, but, this, is this sustainable? Is consuming sustainable? And so it's all about becoming more virtuous and more responsible for what we put out, how we put them out. That goes from very early steps on thinking about a product. Do we really need to add a product? What kind of product? How we think the product, the formula, the packaging, the commercialization. I mean, we thrive every day to be sustainable. But then, eventually someone's going to tell me, well, you ship your products by plane to some parts of the world. So am I being honest? There are some limits, and we still have, and I think it's important because we're part of a world that's going to be evolving, and we will be consuming because people will be looking for anti-aging, longevity, and skincare. But it's just a function of changing also everyone's education level and understanding of what it is. And it's like the clean concept that we were touching on. It's just a function of, it's really everyone's philosophy about this. And if people start to consume differently, we'll put out products differently. I think comes from both ends. The consumers are pushing right now. And just to touch on the clean, there's something that should be also said here, is that the consumers being educated by apps like Yuka. I have nothing against Yuka, which is a very powerful application here in France, that basically the consumer goes on a barcode and can check the composition of a product. And this app tells, it's like the clean beauty app, and it tells the consumer, if this good or bad. And it's simple. It's like there's a red light, a green light, or an orange light sometimes. And each app has their own thing that they're looking at, whether it's allergens or whether it's preservatives for some of them. So it's tricky to be everything the consumer wants today. So we really need, I think, to work towards this sustainability and thrive for that. I think the industry is really working hard on this, from the big groups to the small ones. But then, education has to come, from us and also from other parts, and regulation maybe as well. It's hard to make plastic without plastic. It's hard to make a formula without chemistry.
Okay, so we've covered aging, anti-aging, pro-aging. We've had a discussion on exposome. We've talked about protection. We just talked about sustainability. What else is there? And what else should we be addressing if we're not talking about aging? Now, the one that springs to my mind is probably diversity, inclusivity in this space. This is something we have always been very poor on as an industry. Individual brands obviously target individual people and individual skin types and so on, but is something diversity and inclusivity, how do we put that into a wider cosmetic arena, a wider cosmetic landscape? Annee, are you addressing diversity at all in your product? Is it something that is relevant for what you're doing?
I guess from the way that I look, diversity is something that we all have to look at, given we know that the skin is different on different types of people, different origins of people. I work very much from the inside out. So the way that the stress and everything impacts our skin, our mental, for me, that doesn't change. So looking at, we have spent a lot of time and a lot of doing our own research, looking at cortisol and hormones and how that actually impacts the skin through doing our own EEG studies and, speaking with neuroscientists. Actually got a conversation with an MIT guy this week on how we do that. So for me, looking at that concept and smell and all these different elements and bringing that into the skincare to do a very holistic perspective. So, and as we do that, we're once again a very small company of 5 people where we manufacture and everything is in-house. And my patients are my biggest source of information. So it's something that I look at in the development, in the more bespoke things, but on a global thing in terms of actually commercialization, it's we are still waiting for more data and things like that to be able to feed that. But it's something that we that we consider very much so. But yeah, it's coming, and it's been one of the things that I guess we've just been, like Michèle's mentioned, we can't be everything to everyone as an indie brand. And, we have a very diverse group of customers. And, for the moment, I guess it's like my head and a very small head. So, our big thing is the sustainability that we just talked about before, looking at trying to work with the education of people and looking at how an ingredient is from sourcing to disposal, where it finishes up, where it ends up. And, as we can and will, we will sort of we're bringing more and more things into the range that we can look at in terms of customer skins and the changes of those skins. But it's something that I am still learning, something that I'm really educating myself on and trying to understand more. In this, everything's a big learning curve.
Patrick, I'll come back to you on this because obviously skin tone is particularly relevant as far as SPF is concerned. And this is something I don't know. SPF, I presume, is there a particular skin tone that's measured on? And so how does an SPF value correlate to different skin types?
No, well, to answer that question, it's tested on different skin types, but actually the range of skin types doesn't reflect typical communities across the world. So certainly, you look at it as a European brand, it doesn't. I sort of build on what Annee was saying. I think it's about understanding the end-to-end impact of your business. And, in the same way around sustainability, it's not about doing one thing really well and then not understanding the biggest impact. I think in terms of, you look at this from a diversity perspective, a year on from the sort of start of the Black Lives Matter movement. And what I've seen many of us have done is turn attention to say, oh, well, let's feature more BAME, more Black, models, quite frankly, in what we put out there. But the reality, I look at SPF, the rates of melanoma are slightly lower amongst BAME communities than they are white, but they're still very high. And the survival rates from skin cancer are actually much, much lower amongst Black and ethnic minorities. And certainly there's a good deal of research around this. So actually, I look at this as a brand where we're trying to influence how people look after their skin in the sun, their relationship with the sun, that the SPF sun cream sector's just not done enough on this. And actually, the biggest impact is probably not on formulation. It's around behavioral change. And pumping out a nice image on Instagram of someone with Black rather than white skin isn't getting to the heart of behavioral change. How many of businesses have looked at actually doing, in formulation terms and marketing terms, doing workshops and focus groups with communities that are not actually using product enough to protect themselves from that episode. And I think really we're at the beginnings. And my slight concern, I guess, a year on from the start of Black Lives Matter is that, it feels like maybe simply having greater diversity in terms of, the people that appear in our imagery is enough. For me, it barely scratches the surface. And we've got a huge amount more to do as an industry in this space.
So I think this leads on to sort of what my last point here on checklist is personalization really fits here as from a if we're looking at diversity, if we're looking at getting the right product for the right product for a particular person, then obviously that is personalization, and that should be depending on whether what age they are, what lifestyle they live, what they're exposed to, and obviously what skin type they've got as well. And this is all personalization, and this is where personalization should actually be. It is getting the right product for that person, but that obviously requires us to know what product is required for a particular person or a particular person's needs. So how are you? I presume, Patrick, I'll stick with you. Are you addressing personalization at all, or is SPF something which is a little easier to deal with because everybody needs it?
It is a little easier, yes. So we're pretty limited in what we've done to date. However, quite frankly, as we look at new products we're going to bring to market, it is more and more important. What I'd add, the one piece that probably doesn't, across everything we've spoken about this morning, doesn't pull into that is actually sustainability. Interesting characteristic there is it's not personalization. It's actually what operates at a regional or country level, because actually the way in which I could recycle one of my products here in Paris with Michèle, if she was holding one, is very different to here in London, you know. So actually there's that characteristic around it as well, that we live in this more and more international world, and yet there's elements that are individual to the absolute individual personal, is exactly as what you described in some of the things Annie's been talking about. Yet there's other elements that are based around, you know, how things are regulated or formulated, or indeed how you can deal with a product or a piece of packaging in an individual country. So yeah, it's going to go that way. So absolutely, we're going to see a combination of sort of moving to the two extremes: more international in terms of how we think, talk, and behave around one another, yet real personalization in terms of, you know, what works best for an individual in terms of a product.
So I think we are almost at time. So I'll just go around and ask each of you, and try and keep it relatively short, but where will the industry be in 5 years' time? Where are we now? Where should we be going? How do we get there? So I'll start with Annie. Would you like to say where is it going to be in 5 years' time?
Very interesting question. Very interesting question, isn't it? I think I really think there will be more. We're listening to our consumers more, education by brands and forward thinking by brands, leading that element of education, so people understand more of what they need, not that, you know, they need absolutely everything. So we'll be sort of, I think that we will be helping people to find out and discover exactly what they need in that very personalization way, rather than just everything from that whole, like we talked about, the whole anti-aging thing. And I think we will be more accountable for what we do with that sustainability thing in our practices, because the consumer is just becoming more and more knowledgeable. So I think we'll be more accountable, more transparent, and just more intuitive led in terms of educating our customers.
Okay, Michèle, 5 years' time, where is the industry? Where should it be?
Where it should be, I wouldn't be the one to know this or be pretentious to say it, but I think part of, because of what we've just all, you know, worldwide lived through this past almost year and a half now, I think health has become something that was never part of our vocabulary. When we were talking about skincare, it was mainly anti-aging and beauty. And suddenly health is part of this, even in China, where it was not even a concept when you talked about skincare. And I think part of this, part of our industry will definitely be growing and coming from a health approach. And I think the second aspect of this will be probably even more regulated than we are today. And we are already very regulated, which consumers sometimes doesn't know. You know, we touched on it before with Patrick and you. And I think regulation is going to be key, with a lot of new elements like sustainability, like accountability, and it will naturally, I think, lead to transparency. But at the same time, beauty is beauty, and we're part of the beauty industry. So I think there's going to be a lot more areas for a lot more innovation when it comes from packaging. But I think the most innovation will come from formulation. I work a lot on formulation, and we are nowhere today when it comes to making things differently, thinking things differently, because the lab still work, and you know this, still work with very known, established formulation principles, and I think this is changing, and this is going to be for much better as far as I'm concerned. And there's a lot more going our way in terms of innovation from R&D, ingredients, and laboratories. regulation will be part of it, and health will be a big part of what comes out there for skincare. Now there's going to be a lot of other things that would be probably part of beauty, because what we haven't touched on is that the hybrid products are now floating around the market, whether it's a foundation that's going to have some skincare claims. So the multiple claim products are out there. But I'm talking for skincare, and I think skin health will be a major drive in this industry, and that's a good thing, I think.
Patrick, would you like to comment on this?
I think the biggest change 5 years henceforth will be we'll have fewer things. There'll be fewer products on each of our dressing tables, and therefore there'll be more selection around what goes there. And actually, therefore, I don't think there'll be a huge amount more regulation. It doesn't feel like that's the tone of voice internationally. I think it will be semi-self-regulated, but what's happening more and more is true experts have a voice to help lead consumers to make these decisions. So if consumers are buying less because they recognize that, they need less, and we talked about personalization, then actually the role of the expert to help advise and lead those people. And as a brand, your level of trust only goes so far, always, because we're of course trying to sell our products. We're part of the beauty industry trying to do that. So actually the impact of those experts, I think, will be huge as that moves forward. But yeah, we'll need less products, we'll want less products, so we'll be more selective.
Okay, I'll just add to that, I suppose. Where would I like it to be? Regulations. I'd actually think I would like more regulation, but I would like it to be in the right place. There are lots of claims that on the science that we can't make, though we know the science is there. There are a lot of claims out there that people are making that we know the science doesn't back up. And these are the sorts of things I'd like movement on, personally. And I think, where would it be in 5 years' time? I think there will be personalization. I think there will be, as you say, Patrick, lots fewer products on the shelf, but I'm hoping that's because there will be in the consumer's hand, on their smartphone, whatever, in their magic mirror, the opportunity to check both what products they want, but also checking what products they're using actually work. And that means they're going to start discarding the ones that don't work. If they can't see a difference, and we are all looking at, it is all a case of what the consumer looks at. When they look in a mirror, do they feel better? Do they look better? Do they feel better? And if the product can't deliver that, and they've then got a way of actually measuring whether it's delivering that or not, I think that is where the brands are going to, the brands that can't deliver on the promises they make, I think that's where they're going to fall down. And I think on that, I will hand back to Angela.
Thank you, Geoff, and thank you all for your wonderful comments today. I feel very, very inspired and energized. I also feel very privileged to have a front row seat to listen to all these wonderful thoughts and expertise that's flying around. And of course, thank you to so many of you for watching. It's a real treat to see you all on the platform and see you all being so engaging on the chat. So thank you for that. Next up, we have a wonderful roundtable discussion looking at need-to-know steps to launch a wellness business. And of course, we have our holistic hygiene panel coming up in just over an hour. So hope to see you for both of those. But in the meantime, I will let you get on. Thank you very much and goodbye.